What is up, everyone? It is Nick from Aussie Money Man. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about something I personally think is pretty exciting and interesting, and that is basically the 12 different ways people can get wealthy. Now, this is applicable worldwide, not Australia specific in this case, but it's a topic that I've spent a lot of time researching anyway, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. And the other thing I wanted to say is to make sure you hit that like button, so just press that right now, please. Appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, my name's Nick. Please subscribe. There's a bunch of information about me in the description below if you're curious, or just shoot me a message. Alright guys, so let's start with some basics. We all know that most people get wealthy from business. The statistics support this. Less so from jobs, and then even less so when it comes to inheritance. So they're sort of the three things that people would generally think of, but there's actually 12 from my research. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be going through those 12. Now guys, another important thing to say is the wealth will always be concentrated in the hands of the few in a capitalist society. That's just due to the nature of the way that the world works, the way that people work. There will always be people that work harder, that are better at what they do, and are more skilled, and therefore the cash will flow to the few. And it's always going to be that way. But what I think this video is more about is how it's interesting how the different ways that people can approach it. I mean, me personally, when I was younger, I was always like, okay, I want to be wealthy. I want to be able to do the things I can do, and to do that I need to be wealthy. Money is a tool after all. And how am I going to do that? And I knew about saving and investing and compound interest, think Warren Buffett, and I kept getting told by mentors and all that, and people that I reached out to, or at least later became mentors, would say to me, start a business, you have to start a business. Other people say get a really good high paying job. Some people say married someone really rich, but there are a lot more ways than that. So we're going to go through specifically the 12 different ways that you can become wealthy. Alright guys, now with all that said, let's jump into number one. And number one is the one with the highest number of people in it, the highest proportion of wealthy people, which is, of course, to start a business. So while, yes, this is difficult, most businesses fail in their first 5 years, like a huge proportion. I'll have some statistics on the screen. This is actually a US demographic, which is ironic, I know, given the nature of this channel, but this video is a worldwide applicable video, specifically, I guess, to the Western world, but really it just applies to every nation, and maybe more specifically developed nations. So I think it works. But basically, you can start a business, and if it works, you're probably going to live a pretty good life if you can manage to get it to work. So that is number one. And as said, that is a really large, disproportionately large portion of the wealth. Alright guys, and the next one is to join a fast growing company / invest in it. So if you join a company relatively early on, or you're working in a company and they have a stock sort of program, or you just invest in it. And a good example of this is Malcolm Turnbull. He invested in, I think it was Ozmail, which was one of the first email platforms in Australia. He invested, it's said to be about $500,000, and sold it 5 years later for $52 million. The man now has a net worth of about $200 million. So, this is definitely a good way. So you can join these companies if you've got a good eye for it, and this does reduce the risk slightly. If you're not that great at business and you can't do the former, maybe you can leverage off someone else's business skills, and that's what a lot of people are doing for years. Another good example would be people like Warren Buffett. He used multiple different, multiple of these 12 methods, like most of us do. I personally absolutely do. Don't put eggs in one basket. So I think this is a very interesting one. Basically, if you've got a good eye for, you're seeing trends, you've got a good eye for what you think is going to be the big thing next, this is an absolutely good way. Join the company, get like a share sort of program where you get paid in a certain amount of shares of that company, or just go out ahead and invest, jump on the on your relative sort of stock market and start buying. I mean, I know I personally invest in the stock market. I haven't spoken about it a lot on this channel. I'm definitely going to soon. I even do a little bit of swing trading, but I think this is a little bit different to that. But nonetheless, investing and joining a company early is an absolutely very real and viable way to do this. Plenty of even business people, so I mentioned Jeff Bezos, actually use this method as well. So he invested in all sorts of companies. I believe he invested in Google quite early on as well, while actually starting Amazon. So the type of people that normally are making their own businesses normally have that insight that they're using as well to invest. Alright, so of course, those two are starting a business and investing in a business / joining that business / company early in sort of their own category. The next three are as well. And the first of those three the next three are basically to become a specialist. So, a doctor, lawyer, psychologist. Think of people like Dr. Phil, right? So while these jobs alone, if you're just doing them normally, may not make you wealthy within themselves, you normally have to use some of these other methods, which I'll get to soon. In addition, Slash is utilizing compound interest in a frugal lifestyle, something Warren Buffett is also famous for. You'll notice a trend here. A lot of these, it's hard to find wealthy people that are doing one of these things. Normally, they're pretty well diversified, but you can certainly use one of these things to make all or majority of your wealth. So basically, what it is you think of people like Dr. Phil. They don't just become a specialist with a high-paid job, but they become the best. They become in the top 10, top 1%, top doctors, top lawyers. That is a brilliant way to get your wealth, and it applies. What I said earlier in the video, that idea of all the wealth sort of going to the few, that applies to everything. So even within, for example, just doctors in a specific country, or use Australia as an example, most of the high-paid doctors, it's going to be a few of them. There's going to be a few that are making like $20-30 million a year, with their own practices, really good at what they do, just top guys, and there'll be others sort of making $200,000 to $300,000 a year. So I've actually spoke about this one a bit before in that video where I did the top 10 highest jobs. This was basically in the skilled category. I spoke about, if you've got a high in-demand skill, you can make a lot of money from that generally, especially if you're the best at what you do. As I said earlier in the video, right at the beginning, all these things only, they all work, but they work a lot better if you become the best at what you do. Now, an important thing to note about this one is the other two methods, and you'll see a lot of these methods require time, so they're time building up the business and all that. This one uses a lot of money, depending on where you are in the world. University education or college education or tertiary education, depending on where you're from, is extraordinarily expensive, and then, it's using time as well, so it's time and money. The opportunity cost is huge, so that's definitely something to take into account. Alright guys, so number 4, which fits into these three, so you've got so far the skilled, and now you've got management. So if you work your way up into any company, look at CEOs of all these companies. They don't own the business. A lot of them don't. They're just the CEO. They're being paid huge amounts. Look at the CEO of Google. Look at the CEO of Apple. They're generally just people that have worked their way up in management through over the years, and you don't have to be the CEO, but obviously you want to be the best, so ideally you'd want to be the CEO of one of the best companies, as I keep saying, but a very good way to bring wealth to yourself is just to do management in any role. Generally get paid pretty well. The higher up you go, the more money there is to be made. Alright guys, number 5, which again fits into this category of these three, is to basically do dangerous/hard jobs. So think like tree loggers, divers, particularly deep sea divers. They get paid very well for what they do, and it's because it's dangerous. It's because not a lot of people want to do it. I gave the example in my other video about certain correctional officers, particularly in a youth environment. They get paid very, very well, given that you don't need any qualifications to do it. So unlike number 3, where you have to do a university education and all those sorts of things, you don't have to do this here, and you'll generally get paid more than most university grads, and I've done the math for that. It is definitely correct, at least in Australia, and I can imagine it would be applicable in most of the rest of the world. So that's a really interesting one to look at. Alright guys, so jumping into the next sort of category, this is something I mentioned before. This is going to be number 6, and that is the slow, frugal way to wealth. Think Warren Buffett, think me, and that is basically utilizing compound interest, utilizing that exponential curve, utilizing what Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world. This is basically when you're not living above your means. In fact, you're generally living a pretty significant amount below your means, meaning that if you're making $100,000 a year, you're living at $100,000 or less. Ideally, if you want to be super frugal, you're living at $50,000, you're living at $30,000, you're living at $20,000, whatever it is that you're able to do and that you're happy to do. And you're sort of sacrificing, I guess, a little bit now, depending on your preferences, and to allow a better sort of lifestyle later. So it's sort of delayed gratification. So a concept that is extremely prevalent across all of these sort of categories, all of these 12 things, because wealthy people are generally people that are very concentrated on delayed gratification in lieu of instant gratification. Now, it's important to note, guys, doing this alone will work. If you just want to work a normal job, average pay job, and use this, in most countries, you'll retire quite wealthy and quite happy. However, ideally, you want to do what Warren Buffett's doing. You want to do what I'm doing. You want to do what a lot of other people are doing, and that is not only follow this, FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early sort of movement, but also, have a side hustle, right? And if you want ideas on side hustles, I've got them linked down there. I've got my ebook, which you can download completely free. I talk about how I make money from market research. I've got videos on match betting, all sorts of things like that, different side hustles which means you're making more money, meaning you can have more money invested away and reach that sort of wealthy point quicker and with more money in the bank. For anyone that's curious, me personally, I'm using almost all of these except for a few at the end, which you'll understand soon. But basically, really, it makes sense to utilize as many of these as you can. Alright guys, so far we've sort of covered the business side and the investing side. We've covered the sort of the job side and how you can get wealthy from a job, and obviously you need a high paying job to get wealthy from a job. You don't need it, but it's the best way to do it. So that sort of is that sort of category. That was 3. We had 2 for the business and investing. We had 1 for compound interest / being frugal. But we've also got this next sort of category, which is 2 points, 2 different ways of getting wealthy, and they are basically to go into sectors where there's a lot of money. And if we look at the statistics, which I'll have up on the screen as I'm speaking, you'll see that these are huge. And the reason for it is because there's money available, and there's a lot of money being turned over. There's a lot of money to be made. So let's start with real estate. Real estate is probably the most expensive asset most people will buy in their lifetime. There's a lot of money there, and that means, of course, there's a lot of money to be made. So getting into real estate in almost any form, whether you're an agent, you start as an agent, you build your way up and start your own business within real estate investing, whatever it is, if you're just in that industry, you can make a lot of money. And that leads me on to the next one, which is to get into the financial industry. So there's a lot of money to be made. People are investing. When they're investing, it's a lot of money, right? Think of wealth managers and brokers and all these sorts of things, hedge fund managers, right? Of course, you want to be at the top 1%, and I need to make that clear. You can't just go into these things. And if you want to get wealthy quickly, at least, and try to take the fast way to wealth, you need to be good at what you do. But if you're going to be good at what you do, you might as well do it in sort of, I guess, the most optimized, the most ideal industry. So the finance sector is the next one. And again, I'll have the statistics on the screen. When there's a lot of money to be made, where there's a lot of money available, there's a lot of money to be made. So that's sort of the next 2 there. Alright guys, so the next 4 are completely unique in their own categories, and these are, I guess, the more sort of interesting ones. I think they're all interesting, but these 4 are particularly interesting. So let's jump into those. Okay, so number 9 is to get famous. So pretty much there's a theory out there basically that says if you have 1,000 true followers, you can live a comfortable, pretty comfortable, sort of wealthy sort of life from those 1,000 true followers. So these are generally people that will come to your seminars, watch your shows, buy your music, whatever it is, watch your YouTube videos, whatever it is. So fame really is a way to get wealth. I mean, you look at people like Kim Kardashian, who are famous for being famous. Really, these days it's become a lot easier. A lot more people have access to a lot more people. So we have the internet. Look at me right now. In a way, I'm utilizing that. And while I don't have a goal of becoming a rock star or a giant influencer, I certainly am having influence here. And there's a lot of other people doing it on a lot bigger scale. I know people in Canberra alone. Canberra is a very small part of Australia. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a population of like 500,000-600,000 or something like that. So a very small part of our country's like 25 million population, and there's people here that have 15, 16 and have followers of like 15, 16 million people, and they've done this themselves just by jumping on the internet and becoming influencers and become quite wealthy from it. Because guys, where there's interest, there's money to be made, right? News outlets know this, and a lot of smart people know this. Again, those 2 young people that I mentioned utilize this. They knew that. They said if they can get a following, they can make money from that following, and that's just facts. If you look in the finance industry on YouTube, might be more relatable for a lot of people. Look at people like Graham Stephan. Yes, they do a lot of other things, but the truth is, and he says it, he's a very honest guy, and that's why I'm using him as an example. He does make a lot of money from things like affiliate marketing and all that, which without a following, without an audience, do not work. So getting famous is certainly an absolutely extremely viable way to become wealthy. Alright guys, and number 10 is something I'm sure you guys are expecting, and that is everything ever illegal. So because you're doing something illegal, it sort of comes back to that one that I mentioned about things being dangerous. Doing something sort of dangerous, things that people generally don't want to do, something sort of adverse, and this is everything illegal. I think it deserved its own category for obvious reasons, but basically, the truth is crime does pay. If you're smart enough to get away with it, and while I don't endorse crime at all, obviously otherwise I would not be sitting in front of this camera right now, it does pay, unfortunately. I wish it didn't, but the truth is it does. If you're good at what you do, just like it fits into all these, there's a lot of money to be made. I mean, I'm sure everyone has come across or seen documentaries and all that of people like Pablo Escobar, who was the top. He was the top, right? He was probably the top 0.1%. But you'll probably meet someone in your lifetime, if you haven't already, who's sort of gone into I don't know, like drugs or guns or trafficking of some sort, and they probably are living a pretty good life from it if they are good enough at it to not get caught. Again, I do not endorse this, and this is one of the few that I mentioned earlier that I do not do, and I will not do. However, the truth is, it is a way to become wealthy. Alright guys, and number 11 is to inherit it. So this actually does make up a lot more of a smaller proportion than what people think, of wealthy people I should say. So a lot smaller proportion of wealthy people than what most people think. As I said earlier in the video, it's actually a very tiny proportion. A lot of people don't realize that. So I mean, this, you might think, oh well, you had to be born. How can you, inherit money? Well, you can do what a lot of people say is, say it as a joke, but some people don't, unfortunately. And that is to essentially become a gold digger. That is to marry someone who has money, marry someone who comes from family with money, or something similar. Again, not something that I'm interested in doing. However, it is a way that people become wealthy. Some people are born into it, some people marry into it, some people do all sorts of weird, dodgy things. But it is a way to become wealthy. If you have a really wealthy grandparent, or someone somewhere in your family, and you somehow inherit that, well, good for you. Now, guys, just as something interesting that I thought I'd add for you, it's actually, all the studies are sort of slightly different, but it's around that 20-30% mark when it comes to how many wealthy people inherited it. However, that doesn't take into account how many wealthy people came from privileged backgrounds. And I don't know the exact figures on this. I'll have them up on the screen if I'm able to find them. I did have a bit of trouble finding solid figures and studies on this topic, but I found it quite interesting because you do hear all these stories about these really wealthy people who came from pretty average backgrounds. So Steve Jobs is a pretty good example. However, if you look at people like Warren Buffett, who people think came from a really average background, they did have a lot of privilege. So, for example, Warren Buffett's father was an investment banker, and started helping him investing, and the father had connections to a lot of people that most people would never have. Normally. So you've got to look at things like that, and I'll have the figures up on screen if I can find them. But it's just something to take into account, something interesting. I guess if you're looking to become wealthy, like a lot of people are, it can allow you to sort of better position yourself, and that's why people say don't compare yourself. You don't really know what people have going on in their life. You don't know if even if they were living a pretty average life at one point in their life, some great aunt died and they got given $30 million. In inheritance, you never really know, and I think that's just one of the many reasons why you should not compare yourself to others, and you should simply compare yourself to yourself yesterday, the year before, etc. Alright guys, and number 12 is basically to get lucky. It does sort of merge with the last category, however, given that inheritance is a hugely disproportionate sort of part of getting lucky, and sometimes it's not. Again, in the case of marrying and all that, that's generally not luck. It's generally something that people are quite aware of, and truth is, does influence their decision no matter how much they say it doesn't for a lot of people. So basically, this is things like winning the lotto and all that. The chances of obviously these things are tiny, and not something that you want to chase. But basically, if you want to go ahead and count on this, you can. Some people do all of these methods, and including this one, and they buy some lottery tickets every now and then. I personally just don't do it. I don't like the numbers. Statistics do not add up in my head. I am a math guy, so these last few are basically the ones that I don't do. I'm not seeking people. I'm not seeking to inherit money. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not hoping on my luck. Those sort of things. But all the ones before it, I'm doing pretty much. In one way or another, I'm involved in almost every single one of the other categories. I should say, guys, this category also covers things like sports betting and just everything like that. Everything that's on chance, going to the pokies, all that sort of stuff is just complete luck. The statistics are tiny, and you have to be a little insane or a little dumb, to be honest, to keep doing this throughout your life. So think about that now. Look at the odds, and just look at the odds of everything else, right? So people go, oh, the odds of a business are so low, but then they'll buy lottery tickets, and it's sort of just like, well, that seems a little bit contradictory. So just something to take into account when making your decisions. Alright guys, so I hope this video wasn't too long. I hope it was interesting. Please do subscribe if you have a book for the market research, explaining how to make money from that, which is completely free. You can download that down below. I have a list of what it includes up right here. So please make sure you leave a comment of your thoughts. Which of these are you doing, if any? Hopefully you are doing at least the compound interest frugal sort of way. That's a great way. It's easy, sort of the least effort. Obviously starting a business is a lot more, investing slightly less, and so on and so forth. So yeah, thanks so much for watching.